Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Georgie Gould, and I am the Project Assistant with Global Community Resourcing. I'm pleased to be the moderator for today's webinar, the focus of which is on innovative heatwave interventions and how they can and will be utilised to improve the health of vulnerable populations in island communities during times of heat waves. In our webinar today is facilitated by Global Community Resourcing for the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. Global Community Resourcing has extensive international linkages, and we have been fortunate enough to work on many international projects and research entities. If you have joined us for previous webinars, you'll know that they are designed from feedback and requests we received through the collaborative. The focus of our webinars is to bring together local, national, and international perspectives in research and development, as well as the deployment of smart assistive technology in the community care sector. Just a reminder, if you have not formally registered at the collaborative site, it's accessible to all and free to register. The Global Community Resourcing are not promoting or endorsing any products, research, identity, or organisation. The purpose of our webinars is to serve and to inform viewers of various smart assistive technologies currently in deployment and or development. In this webinar today, Nathaniel and Gwendolyn will showcase key findings from the surveys and introduce innovative heatwave interventions and how they can be utilised to improve the health of vulnerable populations, particularly older adults during times of heat waves. Nathaniel is a Bachelor of Nutrition Science student in his last semester of university at Queensland University of Technology. Prior to studying nutrition science, he worked in information technology. Gwendolyn is an international student from Singapore in her final semester at Queensland University of Technology Bachelor of Nutrition Science degree. She has previously obtained a diploma in nutrition, health and wellness and had facilitated several community projects to improve the nutritional health of the ageing community in Singapore. Welcome, Nathaniel and Gwendolyn. Take it away.
Hey, so welcome to our webinar. So this is Innovative Approaches to Mitigating Heat-Related Health Impacts. It's a collaborative project between Global Community Resourcing, Gwendolyn District Committee on the Aging, and to some extent, Queensland University of Technology. But just before we start, I'd like to make some acknowledgements. So we've been interning under the Global Community Resourcing team. It's been an absolute pleasure working with them. Carolyn Keogh, she's been our placement supervisor from QUT. So she's enabled us to participate in all of this. And the Redland District Committee on the Aging, they've been very generous and helpful working with them. So let's get right into it. So we're from QUT. I'm Nathaniel, I'm presenting now. Gwendolyn will be presenting after me. So we just graduated with a bachelor's degree in nutrition science. So our outline of our presentation, we'll talk about heat waves and their health implications, approaches for interventions, what can be done in a heat wave, innovative platforms, and a summary of the first stage of our project. So the Australian Bureau of Meteorology defines heat waves as 3 or more days of high maximum and minimum temperatures that are unusual for a given location. They can be classified into 3 different levels: low, severe, and extreme, depending on intensity, frequency, and duration. Heat waves are associated with a significant increase in morbidity and mortality globally, and heat wave intensity causes more deaths than the duration. Among all natural disasters, heat waves are historically responsible for the most human deaths in Australia, accounting for more than 5,000 fatalities dating back to the 1840s. This is concerning as heat waves have been increasing in intensity and frequency. This can be reinforced by the recent summer, 2018 to 2019, which was the warmest summer on Australia's record. According to a group of climate analysts, temperatures are expected to continue increasing due to climate change and may result in a 471% increase in heat wave-related deaths without effective adaptation strategies. Further, extreme temperatures have been estimated to contribute to over 1,000 deaths of people aged 65 and above every year across Australia. So the world's aging population and the continual rise in global temperature has a considerable potential magnitude for mortality. So avoiding loss of life related to preventable heat wave deaths are imperative. The Southern Moreton Bay Islands are a group of islands located off of the coast of southeast Queensland, and they are more vulnerable to these heat-related consequences given its geographical location and demographic profile. So on the Southern Moreton Bay Island, 33.9% of its population are elderly, so that's 65 and above, in comparison to the Redlands on the mainland, which is 17.7%, which is about half. So that shows that there's a large at-risk population within the Southern Moreton Bay Island area. So the health implications of heat waves: excessive heat can result in illnesses related to or caused by heat, such as dehydration, heat stress, and heat stroke. It is also associated with the intensification of existing health conditions, such as cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, which are common amongst older people. A study from Brisbane showed that elderly people in disadvantaged areas were most at risk during times of heat waves, and also that being isolated and disadvantaged are synonymous. So according to a study involving low-income heat-vulnerable households with older residents across Cairns, Dubbo, and Melbourne, seniors would refrain from using cooling gadgets, such as air conditioning and fans, during extreme heat, as the fear of not being able to afford their electricity bill outweigh their own health and well-being. Others who wanted air conditioning either could not gain their landlord's consent for the installation or could not afford installation costs. The study also reported that residents who did use the air conditioning would compromise other expenditures, including food, healthcare, and social activities, in order to compensate for the electricity costs incurred from running air conditioning. So vulnerable populations may require specifically tailored messages to inform them of their increased vulnerability to heat waves. So blanket messages may be ignored by vulnerable populations as they feel that the message may not be directly targeting them, which shows a need for specific messages that are tailored towards these at-risk groups. For example, elderly and lower socioeconomic status populations are more likely to be illiterate, suffer from auditory or visual handicaps, or to primarily speak foreign languages, and they may be less receptive to some warnings, like text messages, as they may not be able to read them. So context of your population needs to be included when creating an intervention. Multifaceted approaches are also needed for creating interventions to prepare vulnerable communities for heat waves. So communicating heat advice to vulnerable populations in the past involves media campaigns, pamphlets, websites, text messaging, social media, list goes on. It was found that communicating to isolated heat vulnerable populations, that verbal information was much more effective. Interventions include plans of action that protect and reduce exposure to heat waves, and health early warning systems that ideally are tailor-made, the geographical, social, and economic context kept in consideration. Text messaging interventions have also found to be largely beneficial in public health-related interventions. However, there are gaps in current literature on the effectiveness of text messaging interventions on vulnerable populations. So a current innovative approach to healthcare from the Whole Systems Demonstrator is a program that incorporated telehealth and telecare into healthcare in order to determine the effectiveness of this on health and also to possibly reduce the physical burden on staff in the healthcare industry. So just as a quick rundown, telehealth lets the patient remotely monitor themselves. So that takes the need for staff to physically do that, which reduces burden on the healthcare industry. And telecare remotely monitors the patient, and it doesn't require patient participation, so that reduces burden even further. So innovative solutions like telehealth and telecare are crucial for healthcare in the future, considering the looming potential of an aging population and also the need to disseminate healthcare to this population. A German study stated that from the current formal state of structure of medical care and nursing, that it has failed to prevent substantial human loss due to staff shortages. The study then goes on to claim that a volunteer-based disaster protection program coupled with a registry of people at risk of heat waves may be beneficial, but it must be regulated by policy and also tested. This further emphasizes the limitations of healthcare provided in person and the demand for an innovative way of reducing burden on the healthcare system, especially in times of emergency. So health early warning systems are response systems that consider communication, risk assessment, and activities that help to mitigate the effects of heat waves on a population. And they are becoming increasingly widespread. However, it is yet unsure of the best effectiveness of these early warning systems, and also that these systems need to be evaluated every 5 years. A study in Adelaide evaluated a health early warning system by comparing two events, one in 2009 and one in 2014. After the catastrophic effects of the 2009 heat wave, they implemented in Adelaide a health early warning system which aimed to educate and warn the population of upcoming heat waves. And so comparing the two events, comparing mortality data, ambulance call-outs, and emergency presentations, the study concluded that morbidity outcomes were significantly lowered during the 2014 event, likely due to the intervention in 2014, which used media to issue a public recommendation to adapting to heat and what to do in heat wave conditions. So this is really important to disseminate a whole bunch of information to the public, especially for more vulnerable populations such as the elderly or mobility impaired. I'll now pass you over to Gwendolyn, who will do her part of the presentation.
Thank you, Nathaniel. Hi everyone, I'm Gwendolyn and I'll be taking you through the rest of the presentation. So by now, I think we are all clear that heat waves can lead to some pretty serious health complications. So here are some simple ways you can prevent them. Number one, stay hydrated. Aim to drink between 2 to 3 liters of water, which is about 8 to 11 cups per day. If you think that's difficult, you can try incorporating more fruits and vegetables in your diet, as most are pretty high in water, such as watermelon, tomatoes, and oranges, which can help increase your fluid intake. You should also avoid beverages such as alcohol, coffee, and sugary drinks, as they have dehydrating effects on the body. Next, keep cool. Stay in the shade and avoid direct sunlight, and try to schedule your activities at the coolest part of the day. If you must go out, like in the afternoons, walk along shaded areas or put on some sunblock and bring a bottle of water with you to ensure you're always hydrated. When indoors, use a fan or turn on the air conditioning. If you don't have one, try to look for air-conditioned areas such as the library, community center, or shopping mall. You should also check in on your friends, family, and neighbors. Check how they're coping and help them out if you can. And lastly, remember to keep yourself updated on the weather so that you can plan your activities ahead and make other necessary preparations. If you're part of the Southern Moreton Bay Island or Britland City community, or just thinking of traveling up to these areas, we would like to recommend the Britlands Coast Disaster Dashboard for timely weather updates. It is a website that provides up-to-date information regarding weather warnings and emergencies, such as bushfires, road obstructions, and power outages. It also features a list of important contacts, such as the State Emergency Services and Britland Hospital, should the need arise. Some other innovative platforms that are useful during such extreme weather conditions include applications such as Red Cross Get Prepared, Health Direct, National Relay Service. The Red Cross Get Prepared app allows you to formulate your own emergency plan and share it with 3 key people that you have identified from your social circle or support network. Whereas Health Direct acts as a symptom checker, helping you to interpret medical symptoms and provide advice to guide you on the appropriate actions to take. Lastly, the National Relay Service enables people with disabilities such as the deaf or speech impaired to make phone calls by generating captions and Australian Sign Language videos, also known as AUSLAN, on screen during the call. Given the current heatwave situation, it emphasizes the need for more innovative approaches to help mitigate heat-related health implications. Hence, GCR has initiated a project that aims to develop and provide innovative leading-edge heatwave management resources for the Southern Moreton Bay Island and Britland City community, who have been identified as a high-risk population. This This project consists of 3 stages, and Nathaniel and I have been working on stage 1, which main objectives include identifying the issues faced by the Southern Moreton Bay Island and Whitland City community during heat waves, and the appropriate strategies to alleviate these issues. It consists of 3 main steps: a literature review, survey, and survey analysis. We first conducted a comprehensive literature review on heat waves and their impacts on communities similar to the Southern Moreton Bay and Whitlands community, and innovative technological strategies to mitigate its effects. Some of our key findings include food and water shortages as a common occurrence during heat waves, especially water, which can cause poor nutrition and hydration and result in serious health consequences such as heat stroke. And that strategies such as text messages and calls used to deliver health-related information have been effective in reaching isolated populations. We wanted to reaffirm these findings and their relevance to our target audience, so we created an online survey on SurveyMonkey to understand the problems they face during heat waves, and featured questions including food and water intake, whether they prepared for possible food and water shortages, their confidence in technology use, and their most frequently used and preferred communication platforms. We conducted the survey by distributing promotional flyers to retailers and natives on Macleay and Russell Island, the Redland District Community on the Aging, RD Coda, and Donald Simpson Community Centre. To increase response rates, we also conducted surveys in person around the islands and other areas around the Redlands, such as Redland Bay Marina, Victoria Point Shopping Centre, and Victoria Point Bus Station. Now for the results of the survey. So we gathered a total of 77 respondents, and majority were seniors, 68.9%, and most of them were unemployed and living on the mainland. But most of the respondents that were from the Southern Moreton Bay Islands were mostly from Macleay and Russell Island. So majority did not worry about did not have to worry about not having enough food or water, and did not have to limit food or water intake. And no one went to bed hungry or thirsty, which is good. And only 6 participants responded yes and stated limited food variety at grocery stores and not having a stable or clean water supply or insufficient funds as reasons for food or water insecurity. When asked how much they drank on a daily basis, most drank more than 6 cups of water per day. However, a large proportion only drank 2 to 6 cups, which is below the recommended intake of 8 to 10 cups per day. Majority also did not experience a restricted food or water supply. And those that were impacted felt more affected by a low water supply as compared to a low food supply. When asked if they would prepare for such conditions, such as low food or water supply, more than half stated that they would not do so. And when asked why, they said that there was no need and that they had ready access to resources such through the ferry to the mainland, and that water was always available, and they have never experienced any shortages at all. When asked how confident they were in using technology, most rated themselves a 4 out of 5, which is relatively confident, and more than half own some kind of smart device or technology, such as smart TVs or Google Home, Alexa, Amazon Echo. When asked if they owned a phone, all respondents except one had either a house or mobile phone, and mobile phones were more predominant ones, and majority owned a smart mobile phone. All of the communication platforms that we asked, that mobile phones and text messaging was the most frequently used communication platforms. And most felt that text messaging would be the most effective method to communicate natural disaster-related information. So interestingly, although a relatively isolated community, most of them did not experience food or water insecurity on a usual basis, and only a small proportion was affected by a low water supply during heat waves. In addition, most did not prepare for food and water shortages, as they've never experienced such circumstances and felt that the ferry was an easy way to get food and water on the mainland. This is quite concerning, as transport networks are commonly disrupted during intense heat waves, and this can affect the ferry services as well and affect their usual access to food and water. Most also fell below the recommended water intake, and this can significantly increase the risk of heat-related illnesses if habits do not change in extreme weather. So this re-highlights the need for interventions to educate and alert the community on the gravity of heat wave associated impacts and how to tackle them. As the community has a relatively high technological content in mobile phones, and they've voted text messaging as one of the most preferred and most highly used communication platforms amongst themselves. And however, mobile phone reception can be unstable on the islands, which can affect the timeliness of information delivered and impede prompt action towards preventing heat wave related impacts. So this might be a limitation if we were to use text messaging as a communication platform. So in conclusion, the Southern Moreton Bay Island and Redland community are a high-risk population of heat wave-related health impacts due to their relative isolation and aging population. They have a low water consumption, and their lack of preparation during heat waves is concerning and can further heighten their risk of developing heat wave-related health impacts. Technological interventions to educate and alert them of heat waves may be beneficial in preventing such consequences, given their high technological confidence and usage of smart devices. All right, we have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nathaniel and Gwendolyn, for your presentation today. I'd like to congratulate you both on your research and final report. It's been a pleasure for the Global Community Resourcing team to work with you both, and this research that you've both conducted will play a big part in the future projects that we have going on the Simbi Islands. We do have a range of questions from the collaborative that I'd like to ask you. So Dakota has asked, why is the Simbi community, so this Southern Moreton Bay Island community, at higher risk of heat waves related health complications?
So as we said in our presentation, they've got a higher percentage of elderly people in the population. Elderly people are more susceptible to heat-related illnesses. So whether it be exacerbation of existing medical conditions such as respiratory or cardiovascular conditions. They also have limited mobility, so if they do need to move in times of heat waves, it may not entirely be possible. Often elderly people are isolated as well, as in they may not have the greatest social circle or family bond, especially on the islands, as it is technically considered disadvantaged just because of the isolation it faces due to the only way to get to the islands for the general public being the Southern Moreton Bay Island ferries, which can make it difficult in getting resources or medical attention if needed. Yeah, so also that any existing possible interventions such as air conditioning or fans may not be possible to be run, so they could be suffering from heat and not be able to do anything about it. So yeah, that kind of encompasses everything we said. So
thanks, Nathaniel. I think that answered Dakota's question. We have a question from Charles. He asked, what are some simple ways to prevent heat waves related health complications?
All right, so I mentioned earlier on, some simple ways include just staying hydrated. So just basically drinking 2 to 3 liters of water or incorporating more fruits and vegetables in your diet to increase your fluid intake, and avoid dehydrating beverages such as alcohol and coffee. And also just to keep cool, like if you were to go outside, just walk along shaded areas and put on some sunblock and bring a bottle of water with you to keep hydrated. And also just turn on the fan or air conditioning if you're at home. And if not, just go look for air conditioned areas like the community center or the library, or the shopping mall. And also check on your friends and family, and also keep yourself updated on the weather.
Great, thanks Gwendolyn for that. So Rose asks, what may be the ideal ways to communicate heat-related information to the Simbi Island community?
Some combination of a health early warning system incorporated with some sort of innovative approach due to the population on the Southern Moreton Bay Islands being relatively isolated and therefore disadvantaged. Maybe a more targeted message would be more beneficial, especially to the elders in the population. If you're reaching the outliers of the population, then you'll usually cover the rest in your message. Because if it's not tailored towards this specific population, they may ignore it because they feel that they're not being represented. That makes sense. So yeah, a health early warning system incorporated with some sort of text message based intervention or mobile phone intervention, as traditional medical procedure probably isn't available on the island due to the isolation. So being able to warn people ahead of time, being able to disseminate information on what to do in times of heat waves would be really beneficial, and that can be done. I mean, from our research, the majority of people used phones, so some sort of mobile phone based health early warning system that incorporates
Yes. So basically, approaches that deliver information timely would be the best strategy to help with this issue among the community. And I think text messages and calls would be a good platform to explore for the future. Yeah, in the future.
Thank you both. Can I just ask you to speak to the flyer that you have created, and that will be accessible on the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative, but if you just wanted to give an overview of what that flyer provides.
Oh yes, it's a very brief overview on some of the signs and symptoms that you can develop when you're during heat waves, and also how to recognize them. So mainly heat stroke, how to differentiate heat stroke and heat exhaustion, because heat stroke is a very life-threatening condition. So yeah, we talked about that and how to recognize it, and also we talked about what are some innovative approaches, which I've actually mentioned earlier on, such as those apps, such as Health Direct and the National Relay Service, and also other contacts that are available if you need help. So it's just a very brief overview of how to recognize symptoms and how to get help, basically.
The flyer is a great resource, and we do encourage anyone to download the flyer from the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative and to distribute that throughout the community. Again, I'd like to thank you both for being part of our team at Global Community Resourcing and the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative, and for the research that you have undertaken over the past couple of months. If you haven't already done so, please go online and register for the collaborative. You'll be able to access today's presentation, other resources that Gwendolyn and Nathaniel have produced, and have the opportunity to ask further questions. If you do have further questions or inquiries, please email us at sat@communityresourcing.com.au. Once again, I'd like to thank the members of the collaborative research team and today's special guests, Nathaniel and Gwendolyn. Thank you everyone for attending today's session.